All right, we are live. We are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll call the meeting to order. Thank you. Item 3 on our agenda is an invitation for a citizen to schedule time on the commission agenda for an item not listed. Anyone wanting to speak during this agenda item must sign in prior to the start of the meeting. Any requested action items must be scheduled for a future meeting date. I don't believe anybody signed in. So we'll move on to item 4 of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any comments, any changes to the agenda? Any suggested changes, additions?
Under the exec session, I think we need to add subpar 3, 125.2.3, consulting with legal counsel.
Give me that number again.
125.2.3.
Okay, with that change, is there any other comments? If not, all those in favor of the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We have an agenda. Item 5 is the consent agenda items. You have the approval of the minutes, approval of the travel request, approval of personnel action notices, and approval of the human services report. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any comments? Any questions on any of those reports? Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Pierce. Boersma.
Aye.
Krogman.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Bartley.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, item 6 is routine of business, approval of the claims. Is there a motion to approve? We have documents for the 2019 claims payable, 2020 claims payable, and the January Department of Revenue document. Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any comments on the claims? Any comments? Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Boersma.
Aye.
Krogman.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Pierce. Bartley.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item 9 is department head reports. We're going to start out here with Brian.
Morning.
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 I do have a couple of comments on the claims just for informational purposes. Now that we've got all this snow, one of the claims on the 2019 was detrimental use of right-of-ways along county highways. A lot of folks out around the county are starting to dump their snow within the right-of-way. And according to codified law 3132 3.1, intentional dumping on county highway right-of-way is prohibited. And I've stopped and talked to a few guys about it, but now that we're getting more snow, it's getting to be more prevalent. So it's one of the things that we're going to be watching closely. I've advertised this in the paper a couple of times, but just wanted to make you guys aware of it. That is one of the problems that we're getting a lot of complaints about also, because not all the time do our plows get to these areas where the snow is being pushed within the right-of-way or blown within the right-of-way by other equipment, and then folks are hitting that. And we've had a few instances where people have went in the ditch on these circumstances. So it's one of the things that we're going to start pursuing a lot more because it's getting to be a lot worse as the snow continues to fall and drift and blow around. So I'll be working with Marty and Dan on that. And also to bring up this last snowstorm on Saturday, just due to the conditions and the no travel advisories, along with the interstate being closed, we work with Marty and Bob just to, we didn't go out till Sunday morning. The conditions, you know, if we moved it within 15, 20 minutes, the roads are right back plugged to where they were. So we waited until the wind went down and we were out right away on Sunday morning to move the snow off the road. But I know I received a lot of phone calls on Saturday, and one of the things that I received quite a few phone calls about is there was a fishing tournament up on Lake Ponset, and there was a lot of fishermen that were stranded. Well, it's county line there and that, but we received a lot of phone calls on that. The state park wasn't plowed, and we didn't go in there and move that snow out, but some private people did. But there was a lot of people stranded up there just on the account of that fishing tournament. But I guess that was the major portion of our calls was in regards to that. But it wasn't a consideration we took lightly. You know, like I said, we communicated with Marty and Bob to try to keep the public informed on what we were doing and why we were doing it. But it was definitely well worth the wait just to get out on Sunday morning once the wind went down. But as far as the 2019 claim go, and then the second item that I had on the 2020 claims is one of the items that I had on our 5-year plan. I don't know if you guys recall that, but we had a service truck that we're looking at purchasing. It's I had around $100,000 budgeted, and we found a used one for $49,500. So we didn't have to go out for bid, but just to inform you guys, that's what we were looking at. We got a little transportation to get it up here, but it comes on of 2 different line items. But we're looking at about $51,000 to get it up here, which is about half of our budget. So my mechanic found this. I went off of his recommendation. He thought this would well serve his needs. Our mechanic's got a lot of years of service. He served with John Deere here in town, and he feels that this will serve us for quite a while. So I know it's used and it's a little bit older, but saved us quite a bit of money. So just to cover that, and on January 10th, I met with Sioux Equipment, our tank monitoring system for our gas. The tank itself, or the pump itself, is working fine, but the leak detection system and the inventory level is not functioning. The equipment is not supported anymore as far as the software goes, and I got an estimate from them, and this would get us up to date. The only thing that this estimate does not include is some electrical work, and that's part of the reason why our system has failed. Is currently right now it's not separate. It should be on a standalone circuit, and it's tied in with another couple circuits. And when we get a power surge, or like this summer when we had lightning strikes, that's what took it out. So we'd have some costs included in there for electrical work to get that to be a standalone system. And we're looking at just about shy of $20,000, $19,759 just to update that system to get to up to today's standards. I mean, we're looking at different bars that go in the tank, and we wouldn't have to run any wires underneath the asphalt or anything. Those would work, but it would be the wiring within the building just to get that functioning. So we've been having problems with that since midsummer, but now we had Sioux Equipment come up, and it's not supported. That tank, I believe the tank itself wasn't that replaced recently within the last 10 years, I believe.
This is the diesel and the gas,
Just
correct?
the gas.
Just the gas.
Just the gas tank, because I believe we had the pump and everything was replaced, but the monitoring system was not replaced. So I didn't
The tank is probably a little older than that.
Yeah, the tank's older than that, but the monitoring system and the pump was replaced, but the monitoring system was not.
Right.
So I guess I was looking for a little bit of direction from you guys. Is that something that we want to go for, or do we want to wait until I mean, it's currently functioning, we just don't have the leak detection or the inventory level. We go out there and stick it to get our inventory level, but we don't have the leak detection. So I guess if that was something that we'd be wanting to look at when we upgrade down the road to our building, or if this is something that we feel that we should move on now.
Good.
19,759.32, and that does not include any of the wiring we'd have to do within the current building out there to get it to be standalone.
That would be a new monitor within the tank and the wiring
Yep,
associated with that.
yep. We'd have to get, aside from this price, we'd have to have an electrician wire in the building, because currently right now it's on multiple circuits. So when we get a power surge, it doesn't reset.
So I had two questions when I was looking at that. If we don't do it, how long can we limp along with what we've got? And then is any of what, if we do spend this money, is any of this reusable in the system for when we build?
It would be reusable, because I don't foresee us moving the fuel tank. You know, even if we were down the road, decide to build a building, you know, like I had asked earlier. But that's one of the issues with our current building, is our electrical panel doesn't support a lot of our equipment out there.
We have,
It's two
Brian, do
separate.
we have some liability with the EPA or environmental people if we don't have our leak detection system
It
operational?
would be, yeah.
So there's a liability associated with it, then I don't see there's any way we cannot fix it.
But like Leanne mentioned, if we do upgrade this and say down the road we do decide to go a different direction with our building, this would be, it should stand up for quite a while, but then talking with these guys from Sioux Equipment, the software and everything is updated so often now, it doesn't take long to get behind, and I believe that's where we're at now, is we just got so far behind as far as our software goes. This current system runs on DOS, and that's not supported anymore.
I mean, I don't know exactly what the liability is. There could be some substantial fines
If
involved
we
with
had a leak,
equipment. With the
if we
leakage.
had a leak, it would be, our
Costs us more than
liability.
$20,000 in fines.
Yeah.
Okay. That sort of answers it for me. We move forward.
I'd say do it.
Without objection.
Okay. And bringing up the costs that I had discussed earlier about a truck we had to have repaired, it came back significantly less expensive than what I had anticipated, but it was still $6,500 and $65.52.65, which when I originally had it quoted, it was dang near $18,000. So it's back on the road again, and it's been functioning well, but we're keeping an eye on it. We did have to incur a couple of other issues that we had with the truck, but like I said, it was still less costly than what I had originally anticipated. And bringing that up, we have our motor grader, which we still don't have back. It's down at RDO. The costs on that are going to be roughly about what I had anticipated, that $35,000. So we're still looking at a pretty healthy bill there, but like I mentioned at the last meeting, we had a replacement grader at a cost of $35 an hour. So we're definitely using that up. And then bringing up the bridges on 77, the Sioux River's been fluctuating quite a bit. We talked about it shortly here before the meeting started, but we're seeing sometimes that rivers, depending on the temperatures, we're looking at a 1 to 2 feet fluctuation. They're out of the stream on the south structure. They're still on schedule to pour the deck, but it's been so bitterly cold they haven't moved on that yet. We're looking at mid-February, to depending on weather, to pour that deck but that will have to be housed. But there again, we're above that on the south one, but on the north structure, they're moving awfully slow because of the river fluctuation. So just a couple of comments John had on that. And if you guys would like to have an update, he'd be more than willing to come in and speak with you guys again, but they are moving along. It's just a little slower. than-
Commissioner Pierce has a question.
Before you slip on to the next topic, I don't know the answer to this. When you pour that deck in and it's in the winter and you have to house it, does that affect its its longevity at all? Is it better for us to wait till the weather's warm enough, or does it not matter?
Well, on that structure, if they have it housed, that concrete will cure at a rate that will be, it'll actually gain strength faster if it's housed, in a controlled environment. Whereas if we waited to say like March, April and try to do it within the elements, you might be looking at, too big of a fluctuation there. Whereas if they pushed it back even farther, we might be looking at, significant floods this year. So they feel a lot more comfortable pouring it in a housed environment because it's controlled.
Okay.
The concrete will gain the strength it needs properly in that environment. So, like I mentioned earlier, if we wanted to have John come and update you guys, he's more than willing to do that too. And the 15th, we had Hinky Equipment of Kansas City build a truck. They brought it by just to kind of show off what they had. We had the guys kind of drooling over quite a few things on that, but there again, we're going to be looking at a truck later on this year, so I've been trying to get different ideas from the new equipment that's coming out, and getting the guys' input on that is very important to me also. So we're definitely looking at that. And then we're looking at bidding our annual supplies. We're going to be advertising, and we're going to look at opening them on February 25th at 11 a.m. downstairs on the second floor, and then I'd present that to the board on March 10th. So, and then later on here in the meeting, we had our asphalt bid opening also last week. So, been staying pretty busy.
Any other questions, comments, Commissioner Pierce?
On the not having the plows out, which I understand entirely, I just don't remember that happening before, that we did it that way, and Commissioner Jensen might have a different comment on that. Do we have a policy where if no travel is advised, that includes our plows, or it's on a case-by-case basis? How do we handle that? I'm only asking for public
Right.
perception issues.
I guess we've seen them pull them off, and I think it's more of a discussion between doing what you did, talk with Marty and Bob, and say, is the safety of our drivers now at risk because of visibility? And are we just going through and 15 minutes later we're fighting an uphill battle that you just let it go and hope people don't travel? I mean, that's...
Well, and that was one of the things, we took into consideration also, because the interstate at the time when we decided to do that was closed. Later on, they did open it up, but they issued they had a no travel advisory on it, and that was for, the 14 corridor also. So I didn't quite understand why they would open the interstate back up just to issue a no travel advisory, but, we did go off the no travel advisory, and talking with Marty a little bit here before the meeting, we didn't seem like we faced the issues. People stayed put.
It's just a case of emergencies that you should have people be able to
And that was
respond.
communicated also with Marty. If we needed to go out in the event of an emergency, Marty had contacted the local fire departments with the snowambulance, and then also if it was absolutely necessary, any emergency, we would have worked together to get him where he needed to go.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything more on your report, Brian?
That's it.
Thank you very much. No further questions? You can go. I'm going to go to the community health. Jen Burns, the community health nurse report. We'll bring you up, Jen, and get you next here.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Jen Burns, one of the nurses at the Community Health Office, and Karen Larson is one of the other nurses, but we kind of rotate. Thanks for letting us come and visit. I'm doing it twice a year now instead of quarterly, so if you request any changes with that, make sure you just let us know. But we can always send updates whenever needed too. Our numbers continue to be down, as they kind of have been over the last year, kind of slipping down. I think the state is kind of seeing that trend also. We've been collaborating closely with other entities within the county. For example, clinics, the Medicaid office, just kind of trying to get that word out about what the WIC program is. We, again, have developed like what's called a traveling board that we will kind of spread throughout the county and Brookings through different entities that our clients might go to that maybe are not on the WIC program. I think we've also seen an increase the last probably 2 months, a lot of new participants coming on, which is a great thing. So that's kind of telling us that our word is getting out there, and people that haven't been on the WIC program are coming to us, whether they have children or pregnant or postpartum. Again, the WIC program, we focus on nutrition, but we also do developmental screenings on those kids. We offer them a book or reach out and read books, so talking about the importance of reading, and then the importance of oral health too. The United Way has their dental mobile bus that comes to Brookings 4 times a year, so we really refer a lot of our clients to get into the dentist with one of those. If they don't have dental insurance, or else we try to also encourage them to get in contact with a local provider and get established so you can get on those routine dental cleanings. Immunizations, we're still doing flu shots. We'll give them through the end of June. We have them in our office, so it's never too late to get your flu shot. We also do our other immunizations for children also. School services, we did most of those in the fall. We have a couple left. We do kindergarten screening coming up here in February at Sioux Valley, and then we also do growth and development at Sioux Valley and Dubrook, which we'll be doing in probably March, that we do with the 5th graders. Pregnant women, again, we meet with them monthly. Infant mortality, we really are pushing that safe sleep, back to sleep. We still have some moms that come in that tell us that they're sleeping with their babies, which absolutely crushes my heart, because we've had some incidences within Brookings County that have not ended so well. So really getting those pack and plays issued, really handing out educational material, pointing out the importance of the safe sleep, putting that baby to sleep on their back every time with nothing in the crib. And like I said, that's kind of been a struggle, but we've been really doing all that we can to get that word out. Staffing, we're fully staffed still with our 2 nurses, our 2 clericals, and the dietitian in the office. We've had some clericals from other regions that are new, so they've come to our office and done training with the more experienced staff in our office. Karen and I have also gone to a couple other regions and helping cover like maternity leaves and vacation leave, which has been approved by the state for us to work above our FTE hours. So we're still putting our time in Brookings and then doing that above, helping the other counties out. Community involvement, we're again collaborating with different things. We did our big pot event, points of dispensing, last fall, and we ran out of our 1,000 doses of flu vaccine at SDSU, so that's great, because last year we, I think, gave a little over 800, so we estimated a little bit more and ran out again this year, so that's good. But we've run out 2 at our other flu shots, so we've given more flu shots this year than we have in the past, so that's been a good thing. And then the other report is just kind of our statistics, our biannual statistic report. Again, you can see our numbers are down, but I think we're kind of slowly picking up a little bit maybe in the office, seems a little bit busier. But again, just trying to get that word out to what we offer in our office. So, any questions?
Any questions? Commissioner Pierce?
Yeah.
2 things.
Yep.
Do you have an opinion why numbers are down? And then the other thing is, next time you guys come, Could we see like a 5-year look back on those numbers so we can see how
Oh.
they're changing? Because I can't tell looking at these that your numbers are down because I don't know what they were last time, that kind of
Right.
thing.
I think on the bottom of this stats report, there is the first 6 months. It doesn't go
Right.
back 5 years. But
Well,
yeah, we can
and
sure, yep, we
There's
can get
no
those.
magic to 5 years, whatever.
Yeah.
But it'd be nice to be able to see how it's going from one year to another.
Right, right. And like I said, I think that trend is kind of seen over wide. We've talked to the Medicaid and the SNAP, and their numbers are down too. And it's not just in South Dakota. I think it's states are just seeing a trend down, which I don't know, could be a good thing, if people aren't needing these services, it's good in that fact. But then are we missing some people? Are people not wanting? Like I said, the state's really trying to reach out to see what the reasoning is. But like I said, it's hard to.
It's not a decline in births then. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, nope. I think it's just, I don't know, it's just a trend that all numbers are down across the board. So I don't think it's not just WIC. I know that. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you,
All
Jen,
right.
for your report.
Yep, thank you.
It's close enough, Brian. I think we're going to move on to our scheduled item at 9 o'clock is the 2020 asphalt bids. Adam Poley from Clark Engineering.
Morning.
Good morning.
Adam Polly with Clark Engineering out of Sioux Falls. I'm here to present the bid tabulation for the asphalt overlay project. Any questions or concerns from the commissioners? The low bid from Bose Construction came in almost right at our engineer's estimate, right around 2.4 million.
Any questions? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve the asphalt low bid.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Clark or Brian? Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Krogman?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Boersma?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Dan, are you ready? Should we just go ahead and? Let's go ahead to the 905 State's Attorney's report here. We'll get that finished up. Dan Nelson.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, we can just start with the first slide here. So it was a record year for Brookings County last year in terms of the number of felony convictions. This chart here shows kind of the breakdown of those felony convictions. I've categorized the convictions into 3 different categories. As you can see, the drug felonies obviously is the leading felony. One of the problems that law enforcement is running into this year is the amount of THC oil that is pouring into the state of South Dakota. And obviously with the nearby states having legalized the substance, this is a substance you can buy over the counter. In states like Colorado, Illinois, and Michigan just legalized marijuana as well. So we have some nearby states that have legalized a substance that is still classified as a felony here in South Dakota. The primary way of ingesting the THC oil is through the vaporizer, and it's the same device that you can vape tobacco in. You can just hook the THC cartridge up to the vaporizer, and so we've seen a pretty big increase here in Brookings County, and so I would say that's probably the #1 driver of the felony drug cases here. Meth is still our #1 felony drug, but THC oil is a close second. The property felonies, we had a spike last year. The primary property felony that we have is grand theft, and so this is related to the writing of bad checks, forgery-related crimes that are primarily being committed by those that have an addiction either to drugs or gambling. And so we've seen an increase in that, and that's always a struggle because we have victims out there who are, out sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars, and unfortunately for them, the defendants don't often pay that restitution back, and so those those theft cases are tough from a just a victim compensation standpoint. And then we have the violent felonies, which are anything from robbery, burglary, first-degree burglary, sex crimes, that type of crime. And so we've seen a pretty consistent basis last year as it relates to those previous years. If you go to the next slide, this is something we're most proud of as an office. One of the things that I was approached when I first came into office in January of 2019 by the commission was the need to reduce overtime within the office. And so I sat down with our judges and other personnel and kind of looked over some of our legal documents and how to streamline those, how to modernize those. And so now we're able to do a lot of the judgments in magistrate court in real time. We've modernized some of the legal documents both in circuit court and magistrate court, which has cut down significant hours within our office to the point now where we're able to process, a record number of felonies, but do it using $8,000 less in overtime. And when if we could just stay on this slide for a second, I handed you a handout at the start of the meeting. And this is a report that was generated by finance downstairs. And that highlighted portion is the amount of overtime this year. And what's most significant on that document is you can see the slow decline in overtime hours as some of those changes and efficiencies that I've put in place within the office have taken effect. You can see the significant decline to the point where in the fourth quarter, we only had 7 hours of overtime. The previous quarter, we had 38, 162, and then, 239. And so we're really proud of this. The office staff does a great job in terms of processing the paperwork, and we're saving the taxpayers money, yet we're able to process even more cases. So go to the next one. I picked out 2 of the misdemeanor type offenses that we've seen, the DUI convictions. A lot of people ask how the ride sharing services in Brookings has impacted the DUI convictions, and so we think about Lyft that has come to Brookings, some of these ride sharing alternatives. It actually hasn't affected, as you can see, the DUI numbers to any great extent. The sobriety checkpoints that were set up on 6th Street during Hobo Day and then again on game day were successful in terms of the crackdown on DUIs. And so that, I think, is why we've seen the DUI numbers remain at this level, just because the sobriety checkpoints have gotten more aggressive in terms of setting up on 6th Street. And so, Marty can help me on that. I think there's probably a total between Hobo Day and game day, those sobriety checkpoints, probably over 20 DUIs just on those 2. And that's a lot of DUIs for just 2 sobriety checkpoints, considering that, they took place for only, a period of several hours. Felony DUIs, about the same compared to previous years. DUI seconds, about the same. The thing I would mention on this as it relates to inmate population is that it's pretty standard now among the judges in South Dakota that you're going to get 10 days of incarceration on your DUI second. And so, you can see that 43, that's 430 days of jail time combined on those DUI seconds. And of course, with the felonies, it's even more. But, those DUI seconds, that certainly adds to the number of people incarcerated, just because that 10 days is now so standard on DUI seconds. So most of you have heard, the domestic violence convictions remaining fairly steady. I've only picked the misdemeanor domestic violence convictions. We had a few felony level domestic violence convictions where they have 3 convictions within a 10-year period as a felony. It's the same for a DUI. But this is just our misdemeanors, again, remaining fairly steady. Most of you have heard of the diversion program that we implemented this year. Just this graphic just kind of shows our success with that. We've had, and it's over 110 now. These slides were created kind of towards the back end of December. But now that we've, into January, we've had well over, I would say that's probably 120 now that we've had successful completions. And of course, that translates into over 1,200 hours of community service just within the city of Brookings. And how this program works, not to belabor the point, but when you're cited for underage drinking, you're given a ticket, and then that ticket tells you the time and place that you're supposed to appear in court. And so they appear in court, all these underage individuals, and then before their case is called, we group them all together and we advise them of the diversion program and whether or not they want to voluntarily complete that program. We advise them of the requirements. We have someone from Brookings Behavioral there who will schedule the classes with them. And then if they desire to complete the diversion program, we continue it for 30 days. And then if they don't complete the program within 30 days, they have to come back to court. And then they go do their community service hours, their class at Brookings Behavioral, which is a 3-hour class, and then 10 hours of community service. We've had several nonprofits sign up and participate to give us those volunteer hours available for the students. Humane Society and Habitat Restore, and then Brookings Habitat for Humanity are the 3 most popular destinations for community service hours. They also clean the beta buses that have gone out and back. And one of the cool things is that we're seeing is that the individuals who participate in the diversion program, after they're done with the program, they're actually coming back and volunteering on their own. And so that's been a very big success for us. The eligibility requirements is that it has to be your first offense, and it is only available for underage citations. We're looking to possibly expand it out to other types of offenses, but that's been the criteria up to this point. The reason why we've seen it be so successful is because these are hardworking college students. These are good kids that made a mistake. They want to rectify it, and we're giving them the opportunity to do that. So, yes.
When you look at that 110 number and you look at your chart that says underage consumption convictions, so that says 205 and this says 110, would it be those two added together, or is the 110 included in the 205?
No, that'd be together. So we've had over 300 citations this year, but you cut half of that away from the 200. And so we've had 200 convictions, like what you see in the chart. That's convictions. But you'd add these referrals to that 200. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, and that's why that number is so much lower than those previous years, is because this is cutting into that. So the next slide just kind of explains what those programs are in terms of just the curriculum that we have at Brookings Behavioral. The program cost for the offender is $100. That $100 is paid directly to Brookings Behavioral. It does not go through our office at all. And then one of the commissioners and I got in a debate about whether or not taxpayer dollars had been spent on the program. There has been no additional money allocated to the state's attorney's office to start this program. And so that's kind of where I would start with that statement. I haven't asked for additional dollars. I've been using existing appropriated funds to start this program. And so I just wanted to assure the public that we haven't gotten any more dollars to start this program. And so we're just doing it through existing budgets. So it just kind of shows the total of that. And then if we could go into the actual slides. I wanted to explain one thing and then just open it up for questions if there are any. We put the 2017 and 2018 misdemeanor statistics in here just to give context. Context is so important when you're looking at these numbers, because what do any of these numbers actually mean? Is that a lot? Is that less? And so I think context is important when we're looking at this. And you can kind of see the breakdown there. And this just explains in more detail what those crimes were that were committed and how we got to the number that we did. And then if we go down, let's go down to the juvenile numbers. There was one aspect that I wanted to clear up, and it wasn't included on this report. If we keep scrolling down to those teen court referrals. So this is a little misleading, and I want to clear it up. So of those 44 teen court referrals that we see there, so there have been 16 successful completions, 13 unsuccessful, and then there are 15 that are still pending, meaning that they're completing the program as we speak, and the outcome of their completion hasn't been determined yet. And so I don't want this to think that we've only 1/3 of the kids have been successful that have gone to teen court. That's not what that says. There's several that have been pending that are still completing it. 44, that's actually up from the previous year. And I know there was a push by myself, and I believe one of the commissioners had indicated that we need to make sure we're referring more kids to teen court, and we're doing that. And then this is just the list of offenses that have been referred to teen court. If we scroll down a little bit, so most of these charts are pretty self-explanatory. And I know I've commented publicly in various news related stories about what I think of these numbers, kind of where we're at. So I don't want to belabor the point here, but if there's any questions from the commissioners on that, I would just say these numbers have consequences. I mean, I know Marty has stated, and probably will state again today, that, with these increase in convictions, it carries a cost to the county in terms of incarceration. Last year we averaged 10 more inmates per day compared to 2018. We averaged around 40 inmates in the jail. That was up from 30 inmates per day in 2018. And so me enforcing the law that's on the books, carries consequences, and the consequences, of course, is more incarceration. If felony numbers continue to go up, incarceration rates are going to continue to go up, and there's a cost associated with that. And of course, that's the predicament we're in, and why we're having to, discuss jail expansion. So, yes, Commissioner Pierce?
The teen court information, is that run through the Boys and Girls Club then?
It is.
And that's where we spend the $25,000?
Correct.
And so the total number was 44 that went into the program then?
Correct.
Okay.
44, and then I can send you more detailed numbers about successful, unsuccessful, and then the number of cases that are still pending. So.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Dan, for your report.
Thank you.
We'll move back to staff reports. Marty, you're up as the Sheriff's Department.
Morning.
Morning.
Just a couple comments with the state's attorney is, and I always want to drive this home because I want my jail expansion and we need it, is that everything that Dan deals with, I've dealt with them first.
Right.
Law enforcement is more aggressive too. The city police have a drug task force team, and the highway patrol has 5. A new sergeant that is in charge of 5 drug task individuals that go out, and all they do is make traffic stops for drugs. So that's increased a lot of our business also. And we deal with them twice. Basically, the initial arrest, they may get out on bond, or they can't make bond, or whatever, and then Dan goes to work and does a good job with getting them convicted, and then they come back to me. So I see some of these faces twice when it comes, but we're maintaining. We have 43 presently in jail. I have nobody anyplace else. So I had one inmate at Falk county that we brought back a couple weeks ago. I have 164 on 24/7, and I still want to comment that if it wasn't for 24/7, the jail would be overcrowded. We'd be, that keeps these 164 people out going to school, going to work, whatever. And we got 55 to come in twice a day. I have 23 to come in once a day. We have 74, and then I don't know how many's exactly in drug court, maybe 14 or so.
Yes.
And drug courts, I'm not sure what's on drug court. 8 or 9 maybe? I'm not sure what's in drug court. But, and then we have 9 on GPS. So we're trying to use the GPS as much as we can, Leanne. So, but that keeps us busy. You know, over the weekend with the storm, we had minimum problems for emergencies. Friday, we did have an elderly farmer that called, and he was stuck in a snowbank himself. He went to the barn and got stuck in a snowbank. We thought he was laying in the snowbank, but he ended up walking over the snowbank, and he couldn't get out, you know. So a deputy was dispatched, and also the ambulance, and we were able to get to him and get him out of the snowbank. And he was treated and released right there. He just was a little cold, but he thought he could walk over the snowbank, and then all of a sudden he just went down. He couldn't get out of it. Then we had a report of a semi driving backwards. So the deputy rushed out, thought a semi was on the wrong side of the road, going the wrong direction. Semi was being towed. So it looked like it was going the wrong way. So we went, and it was Dakota Service Towing. So February 5th, Commissioner Pierce, you talked about the courthouse meeting. We're going to have a meeting on February 5th to talk about scanning and any issues in the courthouse or anything that we can deal with. So we're going to try to start those meetings again and start going. So other than that, you know, with the storm and stuff, worked with County Highway. If we had any emergencies, I was to call Jeff Anderson, and he'd get us to to an address if we had to. And the snowmobiles, we do have a snowmobile club. I need to visit with them again. Last year I talked to them before we had storms, but I didn't talk to the snowmobile club this year. But they also will go out if necessary. But County Highway is really good about if they need a payloader to get to an address. But we didn't have any emergencies. We had some cars stuck over by Sinai. They either left the car or they were close enough to home that they could get someone to come get them with a tractor and so forth. So we had minimum problems. We lucked out. The counties surrounding us had issues. Like Lake County, that sheriff, they went out on a lot of rescues and so forth, getting people and getting back to town and so forth. But we got on Facebook and the county website, and Bob was busy putting stuff on, and Michelle was busy putting stuff on, and my staff was busy putting stuff on. So I think people were listening about, and we said that the plows were not out, and that they were at their own risk if they go out. So I think some of that, and it's good to have pictures when you do it. If you put something on Facebook and you don't have a picture, you hardly get any shares. You go out there and you get a good snowy picture, and then you get all kinds of shares. So I was making my deputies get out and take pictures so we can put them out. So, but it's amazing how many shares you get with pictures. So got a lot of visual people out there. So anyway, any questions?
Any questions for Marty? None. Thank you very much.
But I just want to comment with Dan. He's been easy to work with on a lot of this stuff too. He tries to get people out when he can. And
can we record
ones that are in
that?
jail,
Can we record that and put that out somewhere?
We do. I just want to make sure we do get along. So.
All righty then. So we'll move on here. We're going to have a 4-H report from Sonia Mack.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to just kind of reiterate some of the things that Marty just got done saying about sharing those pictures on Facebook. I visited with Marty on Thursday afternoon about what goes into their decision to issue a no travel advisory for the county, because that's the policy for its shooting sports follows. If no travel is advised, no 4-H shooting sport events will be held. that's something we, over the last couple of years, have taken maybe for granted that, oh, if it's bad enough, they'll issue. We've not followed that to a T and always erred on the side of caution, definitely. But I did share Marty's pictures on Friday on our 4-H page and our shooting sport page, and visited with him on Friday afternoon as well about there's been no travel advised or highly recommended no travel, just because 4-H shooting sports motto is safety first, and that should extend further than the range. And a majority of my shooting sport volunteers don't live inside the city of Brookings, and so getting out sometimes is the number one problem. Once they're out, getting here might not be as much of a trial as just getting out of their yard. So I did share that, and I think then that resulted in some shares too, but he's right that sometimes those visuals are much more, speak much louder than just the words on the post. Since being up last, I just recap a couple of things that have happened in the 4-H world. We had a winter calf show the end of December that a committee has taken on and held this year. Weather did not impact that. They had about 40 head of cattle and offered the night before some educational opportunities for youth, including like a judging contest and a skills test to evaluate their overall knowledge of their beef project. And they held a fitting clinic for individuals interested in learning a little bit more about how to prepare their animal for show. Shooting sports did get started in January as far as on the line, but in December we held a safety training or two the first Saturday of the month for our air gun participants. And for those individuals that are third-year shooters and beyond, they're able to come in and take that test on their own time if they'd wish, in order to allow them to start shooting immediately on the beginning of the season. So we did have some of those kiddos come in as well and take their test prior to our kickoff. Yesterday we had a YQCA training, which is Youth for the Quality Care of Animals. All of our 4-H animal exhibitors, with the exception of those that do dog and companion animal, are required to take part in the yearly training. And so we had 40 kids come through yesterday, able to get them when they're not in school for the most part, and we have 4 more trainings scheduled before the end of April. Our robotics program will start this coming weekend, and they're looking forward to getting started, as well as using that new 3D printer. In visiting with Sean a couple weeks ago, and there might be some updated computers that we can implement into our robotics program to improve the equipment that those youth are working on. In December, we held our PEC meeting, our Promotion and Expansion Committee meeting. We had a really good conversation about utilizing our 4-H members to help create some promotional materials to promote 4-H. And so we're working on some content guides for those kids to follow and adhere to, as far as creating some short little 30-second to minute, 60-second videos that we can use on Facebook and run on the TV that we've got connected outside of the office. Also, they might be able to use that as a 4-H exhibit, because we're using some of the baseline requirements as prescribed, I guess, in the State Fair book for the videography project area. With Promotion and Expansion Committee there in front of you, I know that later on in the agenda, that roster is available for your review and for approval. That is something that is requested by the South Dakota 4-H program to have approved and turned in. And just to kind of reiterate its makeup, there are 4 adults and 4 youth, 2 of which are representing 4-H and 2 of which are non-4-H. There are 2 commissioner-appointed individuals that represent agriculture in Brookings, and you've appointed those individuals for a 2-year period, so you probably didn't see them this year, but you approved them last year to conclude their term at the end of 2020, and one commissioner. So I don't know if you have any questions about that roster, but I do know that that's a little bit later on in your agenda.
Any questions on the roster?
Any other questions for me? Yes?
Commissioner Pierce.
Yes. They held it at the Animal Science Arena, yes. No. It never was a part of the original agreement from way back. And so we were paying $1,500 to $2,000 to hold the calf show. And the calf show's changed a little bit since we were holding it last at the Swiftel, or at the holding barn. It was an open to the world points, junior points sanctioned show, which meant anybody from anywhere ages 8 to 21 could participate. And if they were a member of a junior points association, they could use their results or rankings from the show towards their accumulation of points, which in the end of the season are recognized as top point winners. There was some issues with that overall option that we were providing that really wasn't safe as far as insurance-wise, and even though we were at the Swiftel Center, there was still people needing to be observed for inappropriate behavior on grounds from those that are 21. So going to just a 4-H show, going back to that as it originally was, and inviting surrounding counties. So there's 8 counties that participate, Brookings being one of them. Those 4-H members have insurance on them, and it was a much nicer show, which was a little less intimidating as well for those 4-H members that are looking for that experience, to have their animal in the ring and for them to just have that show experience without the intimidating competition. I think it was about a dozen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you for your
Thank
report.
you.
We appreciate it, Sonia. At this time, we're close enough to 9:30 a.m. I'm going to declare a recess as the Brookings County Board of County Commissioners and reconvene as the Brookings County Drainage Board. With that, Mr. Hill will come up and present some documents and some information for us.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you bring up my PowerPoint, ma'am? Yep, right there. And go to the one that says name streams. Right there.
That one. Yep.
Per South Dakota codified law, we are required to have 2 drainage meetings a year. This is our first one for the year. And I wanted to use it, first of all, to give a recap of why we flood in Brookings County and why we don't flood in Brookings County. If you notice on this particular map, it shows all the what's known as named streams, such as 6 Mile Creek. You've got North Dare Creek. You got the Big Sioux River, Dare Creek, Madera Creek, and Spring Creek. The only one missing is the stuff south of us. You know, Peg Monkey Run comes in from Dual County and Hamlin County. Unfortunately, we also got Battle Creek watershed down in Lake County that comes in backwards and can suck us in down there at Lake Campbell. If you notice at Lake Campbell, it drains into the Big Sioux River. The problem is Battle Creek watershed drains into the big Lake Campbell, so that causes us issues down in that particular area. The big flood we had back in September, all that rain was over there. If you see the town of Aurora and Madera Creek, all that drainage pattern over in that area is where we got the 8 inches of rain. And that's why that was where most of the FEMA flooding, where the houses were damaged, was right there around where Aurora is. And then it also over in Elkton, affected Elkton a little bit. And then the one in, of course, the spring floods back in March and April, that was down there at the Battle Creek watershed putting water into us from the south going to the north. And of course, the Big Sioux River is continuously high water. Bruce, as the highway superintendent Gustav said earlier, the Big Sioux River has been fluctuating up and down 1 feet, 2 feet. It's simply amazing how it'll go down on us, and then it'll pop right back up again. So next week, in my travel request, I put in, we've got a spring flood outlook meeting in Mitchell with the Office of Emergency Management, and hopefully we'll learn something from there. Now to get into Brookings itself, could you go to the floodplain map? Right there. We've had some publicity with the new underpass or overpass coming in on Interstate 29 over to the east. And that falls into the Deer Creek watershed and a little bit of what's known as the Upper Big Sioux Basin. And that's over to the right-hand side of the photograph up there. As you're my right, probably your left, depending on how you're looking at it. Over on the eastern side of Brookings County. And a little historical background, Deer Creek, this map here is from 1969. The floodplain on this particular map was based off of flooding in 1969. Prior to 1969, back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, it would have been a totally different map coming over on the eastern side of Brookings County. Up from the Lake Hendricks area, if you follow that stream all the way down to the blow-up area by the city of Brookings, that was all one massive flooded area. It used to wash out the railroad tracks every time we had a major flood. But then they put a diversion dike known as Gillies Cove, a little dam, a natural USGS dam up at Gillies Cove, up there by Lake Hendricks, and that captures most of the water up north now. So it catches the water coming down, and also during that time, in the early 60s, they developed a watershed district up in that area by where Lake Hendricks is. And there's another map, we won't look at it here, but it is in the file that I sent to you, showing the two watershed. We've got two watershed districts in Brookings County. One is the Deer Creek watershed over around Lake Hendricks, and the other one's a Big Sioux River watershed district. And those are actual taxing entities. The Big Sioux River Drainage District, or it's called Hamlin Big Sioux District, it actually encompasses the whole county, all 20 miles north to south in the county. And then the other one's the Upper Deer Creek Watershed District. And like I said, both of them are public entities. They basically tax themselves, and those are official drainage districts. So back to the map, we've had some landowners come in saying that their property has been flooded from basically the line, from what I can tell, mostly is US 14 and to the south. There's a lot of water building up. We've got a new county road. We built a blacktop county road, County 34, I believe it is. It's been underwater occasionally, and all that's on the eastern side. And some of the citizen comments are, well, when you put the overpass in, all you're going to do is stop more water, and what's the plan? So what I wanted to do today was to present that to you and we need to look at that as a county when they start to come in and do the plans on the overpass. Hopefully we've got some input into it, because some of it's in the city, and then part of the work at least is going to end up being in the county. It may be absorbed into the city at some time, but we need to watch our drainage pattern, and we just have to be careful right there. And if you notice, between Brookings and Aurora, there's an awful lot of floodplain right in there, and you got some white areas that shows no floodplain. If that's not high ground, chances are that floods. And it was just when they drew the map, since then we've got LIDAR, which is site imaging radar, and so the plan is to have newer maps made with the newest floodplain once FEMA releases it, and they're in the process of doing that now. So hopefully we'll have better maps, but you also have to realize this map's a 1/250,000 scale map, so it's really zoomed out. It's not zoomed in. And the other update I had was on the Big Sioux River down at Madera Township. I contacted Mark Richards, and He said they did have a meeting with the state mitigation officer, Jim Poppin, out of the state of South Dakota, and that his township is currently working with Banner's Associate to try to see what kind of study can be done. I talked to Mr. Gilbertson, East Dakota Water Development District, and he said with the Big Sioux River as high as it is, it's extremely hard to get any work done on that kind of stuff. And that's the updates I've got. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? Commissioner Pierce?
Could we go back to the first slide?
By all means.
And so when you look at this, and the city is looking at doing a study on 6 Mile Creek, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So what is it are they studying all the way up, or how does that interplay in with what we're doing?
Well, it sounds like the studies on the northern part of the city limits. I don't have a blow-up map of it, but can you zoom just a little bit? Can your PowerPoint, or can you? There you go. Now bring up Brookings for me. Okay, if you look at the city, that's fine. If you look at the top of the city limits itself, there's a little line that cuts off to that direction, to the west. Yep, right? Nope. Come over to the left. You're right. Right there. Now up. Right there. That line right there. That line right there is almost dried up at certain times. And they think there's a blockage in there somehow. And the blockage was probably put there back in the 50s or 60s. And there's a lot of history behind that long before Bob Hill came to Brookings County. And I've seen some minutes from old meetings that has been had. But what they want to do is try to relieve the pressure off of 6 Mile Creek through the city of Brookings and have it go through that bypass channel to the Big Sioux River. I think is what they're looking at. I don't have the study right in front of me, but that's my understanding.
Does that include making some changes to that area, if you know, that a lot of that 6 Mile Creek area where there was some SDSU land, I think there was some litigation and maybe I can't remember if it was Circuit Court or Supreme Court decision that came out. Are they looking at that area and taking care of some of those problems, or?
I'm thinking that's the area that they're focusing on, but I would have to do a little more research for you, ma'am.
No, that's
get back to
okay.
you.
Thank you.
But that's my understanding is up to the northern border of Brookings, of the city of Brookings, somehow years ago, someone blocked some stuff, and over the years, it just kept building up, and now it's diverting most of that water through the city, and they want to try to get it go through out the other way. And there has been some improvement over in that area, but probably because it's been such a wet year.
Commissioner Borsma, a question?
Bob, I was wondering, we've been talking about updated FEMA firm maps for several years, and I'm wondering if we know an estimated time that we'll see those.
We are in the last stage of it. So I would venture to say hopefully the spring of next year.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to be 2020, but I think 2021 realistically, probably in the spring, but I'll see if I can get you an update.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the drainage info so far? We also have the Deer Creek watershed drainage update. Do you have an update on that, or is that part of what your
That was
report
the Mark Richards part.
Okay.
Mark Richards, like I said, he's in contact with Banners, because we are concerned at the Big Sioux River. It's obviously, it looks to me like it's changing channel and stuff, and this board has talked to Madera Township in the past and said, if there's something that can be done, if there's a study or something, it's possible that we might help assist in some sort of study. And then we put the onus onto the township to, okay, tell us what you need help with, and we'll see if we can provide assistance. And that's the stage that we're at right now.
Okay. Any other questions? At this time, I notice Mr. Bose is here. Do you have some comments on the drainage board? Would you like to come forward and identify yourself, and we'll take your comments.
Hello, I'm Lyle Bose, and I am here on behalf of myself. No connection to Bose Construction. However, they are concerned as well as we all are here. I'll just start off by saying I have lived in Brookings now for about 50 years. Some of you have been here longer, but I've been here a long time, and drainage has been an issue ever since I got here. Being in the construction business, it's an issue. And so I've heard about this and watched it, and we have done some things. There's some things done mostly around, but I think one thing that we're doing is we're making this thing a little more complicated than we should. In the last couple of years, I've had to take a hard look at our drainage around here because of a personal situation, and some of you know about that. And what I see is our waterways are plugged. And the reason why our waterways are plugged is a big part of it is like in the dirty 30s, the dirt blew in underneath the fence lines. Well, nothing's taken that out of there. So I did some flying and some picture taking, and them fence lines are at the top of the water. So the water isn't flowing through there. Then there's trees and there's grass and there's everything plugging. It'd be about the same thing as you took your storm sewer and put a half a load of gravel in there. It will not work very good. I've done that. Anyway, so what I'm saying is I would like to advocate a learning session or whatever about what the condition of our existing drainage way is in, because I think it's plugged tight. So therefore, everything continually backs up. Nobody gets relief because the first guy is flooded, can't get through there, backed up. The next guy is flooded, can't get through there. And so we sit there and point fingers. Well, I think that the state legislature created the authority for a drainage board in every county in recent years. Am I right? And I think they probably did that because the drainage issues are not being addressed, and somebody has to have some authority. So, as many of the counties, you guys are the drainage board, but I don't know, as I haven't heard of anything as far as a plan going forward or what we're looking at as a drainage board. I advocate that, and I would gladly help in looking at this. And I think that the first thing we need to do as a county is open the drainage way that we have. Not build new. Let's make the drainage way that we have work. It was put here by a greater being that knew how things work and made them work, and they do work. But we have to maintain those things because for our own we're flooding crops and we're doing all kinds of things and causing issues that I don't think we would really have to deal with. You go south of town, for instance, you go south of town, we develop south of town. We've developed south of town. That water can't get out of town. And the reason, two reasons. Number 20th Street, what we do is we put a sign there, flooded road, go around. Well, that's backing everything up into town. And quite frankly, it's going to 17th Avenue and flooding the houses. So I don't know if that's the answer. I think you need to let the water flow. But it can't flow, because if you go on the other side of 20th Street and down to 32nd, it can't go there either because it's all overgrown and the waterways are plugged. So no matter what we do, if the waterway is plugged, it is not going to work. Period. Does that make any sense? So I advocate that we look at the drainage system we have and maintaining it first. There are tools out there, namely GPS, and there is software that in a 15 minutes, I don't know if you're familiar with my Allison farm over there on the east side of the interstate, right there on 20th Street, 32nd Street. So from that, there's 5 big culverts there. I cleaned that out. There's 5 big culverts there. From them 5 big culverts to South Main is about I think a little over 2 miles or something like that, down across the pastures. And I was quoted, and don't hold me to this, that it would cost me between $15,000 and $20,000 to clean that waterway out. So, I'm wondering why the city has a stake in this, the county has a stake in this, and I'm wondering why we can't work together to clean our waterways out. One of the reasons we can't is because we have no authority to go on the land where the waterway is a problem. That's where you guys come into play. You guys need that authority. Now, other than that, I think that's where we start. And as they talked about that interchange going in there, that's going to tighten that drainage way down. I don't see it as a really big issue, but when they start going across that interstate, they're going to start developing over there. Then the issue is going to get bigger. So I propose that we put together start working on a plan. And it don't have to be expensive, it just has to be done. And then see how that works and where we go from there. Make any sense?
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Bowes? I think when you talk about the authority, I don't know if that's granted by the state legislature for us to have authority on private land for drainage. I have no idea. Dan, or?
I'd have to look into it.
Yeah. We'd have to look into that, Lyle. I can't answer that off the top of my head anyway. Who grants us the authority or the city authority to go into private property to make those changes? But we can certainly look into it and see if we can figure it out. I'm going to guess it's the legislature would have to grant us that authority, wouldn't it? We don't know.
Can't you create an ordinance in the county?
Again, I don't know if we have that authority to go on private property. We can control it with an ordinance to a certain degree, I guess.
Game warden does.
Yeah, he has state authority.
Huh?
He has legislative authority.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm glad you took the time to let me give.
Appreciate the comments, and I think it's something we can certainly start to look at a little bit. I don't disagree with you that the interchange will maybe create some other issues in the future that we need to look at solving them now. Obviously, with the high waters we've had this year, and again, we're going to have, or last year, and again this year, we will have, the issue is not going away soon.
And it'll always come back. That's when we hear about it, is when the water is running over the road. Yeah. When the water goes down, we don't hear about it anymore.
Yeah. We know it's the number one issue nationwide. I've been to conferences. It's the number one issue nationwide, and it's not easily solved, unfortunately. Even if we come up with an easy plan, the legal steps to get to implement it sometimes are insurmountable. So it deserves a look, and I appreciate your comments.
So I'll share one other instance with you. The county installed 5 big arch pipe, 36, 42, I don't know what it is. The landowner claims that's not a waterway. So you see, somebody has to be able to have the authority to know what is out there and what isn't. Okay,
Thanks
thank
again,
you.
I appreciate it. Any other comments, Bob?
I got a quick question for Bob.
Quick question for Bob, okay? Thanks, Lyle.
Yes,
Part of the planning is going to be, you can't do that work right now when everything's flooded, but you can do it when it's dried up.
Yes, sir.
Is there any way that we can overhead views of where the flooding took place and where it's happened over this year and guessing this coming year, that we can get an idea of where that's backing up and where the issues are at, that when flooding goes down, hopefully in the next couple years, that get an idea of like Mr. Bose talked about, of cleaning waterways up and be able to allow that so that water's not backing up, and see where that's at. So we can put a plan together to do some work when it's dry, I guess, is when you're going to have to do that work. When it's, like we talked about that place to the north that dries up at times. Well, now it's full. And if it's backing up somewhere, when it's dry, we need to clear that out and do the work at that time. And I think that sometimes gets set back on priority list when it's dry because there's no problem, nobody's complaining. But you can't really do a lot of work when it's over flood stage,
Well, we actually, some of that's probably been done for us. If you remember, pictometry came and did a flyover for us earlier when we still had too much cover on the ground. Well, that's because of the water. So, and now we got one afterwards. So I'll look into it a little more in depth. And it might be we can get someone to fly an airplane on some specific areas. But countywide, I'm thinking we might already have a good set of images.
Okay. That'd be a good place to start.
Yep.
Commissioner Pierce.
I like the idea that Lyle brought forward of maybe having an ad hoc committee to look at what's going on. And I don't think we'd necessarily have to go on, but I don't know the answer to this for sure. If we can look at GPS or Google Earth or whatever, and maybe look at using some of the tools that we've already got to look at some of those waterways, maybe we could have an ad hoc group that would come back and give us a report and say, okay, this is what's going on with the waterways that we've got, and now would be the time to do it because of the water issue is supposed to be high again this year, and you'll be able to see where those problem areas are. And maybe we could consider putting such a committee together and asking them to work on that and come back with a report for us.
If Commissioner, if I may.
Yep.
We could also go through East Dakota Water Development District, if you would like. They've got college interns and the like, and they've got access to imagery and water levels and gauges and stuff that, quite frankly, I would have no idea what I'm even looking at. So that might be another option. I mean, you could have an ad hoc committee, but you could also work with East Dakota. They typically don't overcharge for small projects, and I don't know what size project this would be. I asked Mr. Gilbertson if he could come today, but apparently he got tied up. But,
and that could be part of an ad hoc committee. I would envision maybe somebody from the state's attorney's office being on that committee to look at the state ordinance or the state statutes and what we can do with our county ordinances. And the waterways of the state don't belong to anybody. Those waterways belong to the people. But how you get access to them, that's the question. And if we had somebody from the state's attorney's office that was part of that group, and of course our chair who serves as liaison for the drainage board, and Jim does our GPS stuff, is that?
yes, ma'am.
And Bob and maybe Lyle or some other citizens, I don't know, maybe somebody from Madera Township might be interested in serving on such a group, and just looking at this issue. And rather than waiting another 6 months when we have our second meeting, maybe we could just make a decision to put some people, boots on the ground to start looking at those issues and come back and make a report. Maybe that is our issue, maybe it's not, but I myself would like to know, are our waterways blocked? If so, is it something we can fix?
Okay. Any other comments? Commissioner Jensen?
I like Mr. Bowe's comment. I agree with him on the waterways. It's nothing new. I've been from Aurora West in that area for over 50 years. It's been a water issue for that long. In the last few years, it's gotten worse. It has. We're getting more water. It's not able to flow. It takes numerous days to flow out. I believe last year, 214th Street was closed almost 80-some days because of water over the road. The water just can't get away anymore. You run into issues with if you're in a farm program for cleaning waterways out, you got conservation districts, you got Corps engineers, you run into all those obstacles. I don't know if we'll have the authority to be able to go on, just like you said, private property and clean some of those waterways out. There's been, in some areas, culverts added. There's some places culverts have been deleted. It all needs to be looked at and reevaluated because your bridges and were put in and they had established flow lines at one time. I'm sure, Bob, you can find elevations that these waterways should be at, and we're move ahead with that to get this water to flow. It just sits out there, and this last couple of years it hasn't evaporated or anything. It just stayed there. So I agree with what Lyle's saying. That it has to go somewhere. I know some area farmers in that area have cleaned out their waterways, but if 2 farmers do it and the third one doesn't downstream, it doesn't do any good, and essentially his waterway will fill back in. So hope we can get something done.
Okay, we'll take a look at it.
These were issues that go all the way back to the state having that drainage map plan and districts put together, and it just didn't work. Everybody was arguing about where the lines were drawn, and nothing got accomplished. And eventually, I think that thing dissolved, and Mr. Gilbertson could give us a better report on that. But at the same time, it became a much larger issue to look at it than it did on just cleaning our waterways. And the premise behind that was when it leaves us in a timely manner, it backs up somebody else downstream, and that was the idea of the entire drainage basin look, and it hasn't gone anywhere. It's just sitting out there with people that won't move forward because nobody else wants somebody else's water. We may be able to get rid of it faster, but then downstream, are we going to have the same issues? Are those people going to be able to take it? So it's maybe a fast issue for us to maybe address it, but it becomes a longer term issue for the people that we let the water go to. They don't want it either in a fast fashion, or if they haven't addressed the issue. So I hope the legislature will take a look at that again and help us by developing some long-range plans for when we are able to get the water out of here. We don't run into problems with other people that can't get rid of it either. After we dump it faster, they haven't taken care of the issue. So just as you said, 2 or 3 farms take care of it, but the next farm doesn't, then it doesn't help anybody. So we have to be cognizant of our legislators and talking about they need to solve the issue, and it just hasn't happened. And maybe we need another report from Mr. Gilbertson. I know he talked about the last time we were at the drainage board talking about hiring a hydrologist to try and figure us all out. Well, all of a sudden we're starting to throw an awful lot of money, and he made the comment that the hydrologist study, I think if he said it correctly, would take about 5 years. Well, we haven't started, so we're now 2 years past the 5 years. And so whether we put together a committee or not, I don't know if we're going to solve it. It's a large issue, but
What the problem is, I'm starting my 6th year on the county commission. We have had this conversation
Every
every
since I've been
year
here.
for 6 years. And we could do something, at least we could get a handle on what our problem is. And the issue that's the legislative issue, which is what we always talk about, because water issues don't apply just to our county. It comes from another county and it goes to another county. But all of that wasn't so much the water as they couldn't get past the political issues on how are we going to pay for it and how many votes the big counties would have versus the small counties. So I don't know that we could resolve any of those issues, but I sure would like us to figure out what our problems are so we've got our inventory done or whatever, and have a handle on what's going on in Brookings County, which is where we can have some control, because I think once the state's attorney's done a little research, we can have some ordinances if we like, I think, but I'd like to have another opinion on keeping your waterway clear. That's kind of just like our right-of-way.
So I think our first step then is to allow you and the state's attorney to come back with the proposal for the committee, and the parameters of their work.
I think the first step is to look at the waterways and see, are they plugged? If so, how do we fix that?
Okay, who's going to look at it?
Well, the people that I would like to see on an ad hoc committee like that, I would suggest would be somebody from the state's attorney's office, Jay Gilbertson, if he's willing to do that, Jim from our commission department, because he's got the GPS skills that would help us, unless Stacy, I'm saying that wrong. Bob, obviously. You as our drainage liaison, sorry. Okay. Maybe somebody from the city, because the city's part of this problem. And another thought that occurred to me as you were talking is Spence Hawley did a lot of work on this issue, and he maybe would be willing to serve on an ad hoc committee. And if we want a citizen, Mr. Bose, you know, those are the people that I think we could have a look and see, is the issue that for Brookings County, our backyard, is the issue that our waterways are plugged? If so, how do we fix that? And maybe if we come up with a good solution for that, then maybe we could have a conversation with Moody County, who does have a drainage ordinance, okay? And maybe they might be interested in doing something that we're doing, and maybe we could work it that way if we can't get something through Pier.
Okay, are you willing to come back with a proposal for the ad hoc committee at a future commission meeting so that we can look at a proposal and talk to the people you've mentioned to see if they're willing to serve, so that we can take an action?
I would when we
have the
take
parameters.
action, yes.
Okay, if you will do that, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. And perhaps Mr. Hill could reach out to those people and see if they'd be willing to serve on such a group.
By all means.
Marty, you have a comment?
I do. I think my land is part of Deer Creek, I believe. And I wanted to clean out my waterway a few years ago. And I had to go through so many steps. It finally went to the Corps of Engineers, and I gave up. So, I mean, it's more broader than just county and state had to deal, because they want to do a Topeka Shiner study before they did to clean out and I was going to do it at my own expense. So, I mean, it's just, there's a lot of steps in this.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that an ad hoc committee would bring up also. I mean,
Okay. And possibly we'll have Mr. Bose on that committee as a citizen. Lyle, you have a comment? Allow you to come up and do that?
I'm Lyle Bose. I can certainly appreciate Marty's situation there, because I did the same thing about 5 years ago, and I was asking for permission to clean my waterway, and they said, the truth is, you can do anything you want to on your land. You can clean your waterway out without any permission. What you can't do is fill a waterway or a wetland while you are cleaning it out. So he said, you know, if they come down the road, you go out there and clean your waterway out, and they come down the road 10 years from now and see that you filled a wetland, then you can suffer some problems. But other than that, you're going to be on the list for 2 years, right? And so I went out and cleaned my waterway. I didn't move anything. I just cleaned the grass and the willows and everything out to the edge line. And prior to that, we got 5 60-inch culverts. I think they're 60-inch, aren't they? I don't know. They're big culverts at one end of that property. I had never seen water run through those culverts. After I did that, when we get these big rain events, they're half full. The water isn't out in my field. Matter of fact, my water can go through the drainage way now so fast that the floodwaters can't get ahead of it, which would be the situation all the way up the line. You know, because what's happening is this water is stopping at these dams, I call them, fence lines, and it's shoving that water all over our agricultural land. And it doesn't do any good for that agricultural land. All that does is flood crops. That's all it does. The rain that comes down and stays on the land is what raises the crops. That flood water is flood water. And it's supposed to be able to go down the stream. Due to Mother Nature, she's blocked it. That doesn't mean we can't clean it out.
Okay, well, we'll try and take another stab at it. Thanks, Lyle. Bob, any other comments?
No, sir.
Any comments from the commissioners?
When would we have, is that to establish that committee and have action? Does that come from the commission or does that come from the drainage board?
Probably at this point, it would be the commission.
That would be the drainage board advising the county
Drainage board?
commission.
So we could,
And then the county commission can take action on what was proposed from the drainage board. That's how I would do it.
so we could put on the commission agenda for our next meeting an action item to do a committee to look at this issue. Is that what I'm hearing said, if that's what the drainage board wants done?
I'd like to see at least a concrete proposal written before we establish it.
Shouldn't we do something as a drainage board, make a recommendation to the county commission that, I guess I don't know if we're gonna do this or not, I'd make a motion to make a recommendation to the commission that we put together ad hoc committee made up of, I guess, Leanne, who you had talked to before. And I think we can make recommendations, or can we?
There's no action item listed under the drainage board piece. So I think we just have to do it by consensus, give that recommendation to the commission as the drainage board rather than making an actual motion.
Okay.
There was not one listed on the agenda.
All right, that's fine.
So without objection, Commissioner Pierce will be in charge of bringing forth a proposal, and we'll have to reconvene as a drainage board to take action on that,
No?
or as a county commission to take action on it.
Right now, the drainage board is making the recommendation to you as the commission, so we'll take
Gotcha.
that committee action up as the commission.
At our next meeting then.
All right. I just heard Dan say it had to be the, okay, we're fine. I've got it covered. Any other comments? Hearing none. We'll take a motion to adjourn as Brookings County Drainage Board.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We will now reconvene as the Brookings County Board of County Commissioners. And we're going to go back to department head reports. Misty, I'm going to take you next, if you would, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a few short things. I have to go down to Sioux Falls tomorrow and work at the State Department Ag booth for the Farm and Home Show. So I will be down there all day. I believe 2 weeks ago, I put in the travel request for that. And then also Watertown, did I say the 12th? I don't think I said the right date. Tomorrow, I'll be going to Sioux Falls. And then February 12th, I will be working at the Farm and Home Show, the State Department Ag booth, there all day. Last year, there was a winter storm, so I hope there's not one this year. Also, we have the annual Townsend Township Weed and Pest meeting at the BCOAC on March 5th at 10 a.m. it starts. There's been a couple changes. I don't have the agenda quite finalized, but there's a couple changes I'd like to make and see if we can get, I believe it was Terry Sletton, to talk about the open meeting laws at our annual meeting. It's quite compact. We've got quite a few people. I think it's going to go at least until 4 o'clock, I'm assuming. So you're all invited. I hope to see you all there. Starts at 10 a.m. You're welcome to have lunch with us. Otherwise, I have the bid paperwork and all that ready to go out. I'll be publishing February 4th stating that the bids are out, and when we're opening them, we'll open them March 4th at 10 a.m. in the finance office. Otherwise, that is all I have.
Would you say the date of the township meeting again?
March 5th at 10 a.m. at the Brookings County Outdoor Adventure Center.
Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank
Esther.
you.
Vicki, I'm going to hold you to the last. Bob left. Of course, I can't do Bob. Then we'll take Vicki next, and we'll do the finance report with it. We have some B noted items with the account, auditor's account with the treasurer, the payroll and additive totals, the highway expenditures report, and the register of deeds statement of fees collected are noted items. Vicki?
Thank you. You should have received in your packet the finance officer's report, and it is all the records we have up until the claims today. It doesn't include the 2019 claims we paid today, but there wasn't that many, so it's going to not change the totals too much. I thought at the next meeting I would give you a report of how much was left in each department's budget and what will be going into the fund balance. So I'll have that for you next time. But for the surplus, general fund surplus analysis, we're at 24.53%. And that is just with our designations and everything, that is just what we were looking at being right in that area. It may take it down to 24.25% or so with the claims we have this time, but it isn't going to change it very much. But I will get those other totals to you for next time. And otherwise, we've just been doing work as usual. I don't know if anybody has any questions on what's going on. The tax notices went out, and there's been people coming in and paying those, and that's what we've been doing.
I will let you know that when we were in Pier for Brookings Day at a small meeting, there was a conversation that I brought up our driver's license kiosk with them, and they said they're still looking at it, but he didn't know if it was an active look, so he was going to reintroduce that as an active look.
And I did talk to the Department of Motor Vehicles last week, and they said that they are still looking at it. That's what they tell us anyway, but they had to order a new machine, and it wouldn't be here until middle of the year probably, so.
Okay. Good. Well, we're still looking anyway for a space for it.
They're still working on it, yeah.
Okay. Good.
So,
Any other questions for Vicki?
okay, thank you.
Hang on. Thank you. Bob, we're going to have you come up and give your report.
Seems like I was just here.
You were.
FEMA has finished their individual assistance to the field activities in Brookings County. They stopped by today and gave me a outlook on what they did. They did state that if you suffered losses inside your house, such as your furnace and your water heater and anything in the basement that flooded, you've got until January 31st to call, and you can contact, the FEMA numbers are 1-800-621-3362. You can call my office, and I can give that to you over the phone. And it's also online, but you got until January 31st if you haven't filed yet. It's not too late to file. It's just FEMA is done with their on the ground stuff here. FEMA has allocated $501,457.98 in Brookings County that's total for individual assistance for Brookings County, right at $500,000. And FEMA has worked with 271 residences in Brookings County. That's the final number from them. March 24th, we got a Skywarn storm spotter training session going on in the county. January 9th, I went to Lowe's to visit the FEMA team that was there at the time. The 9th, we had a PPCC meeting. 16th, I had a 911 meeting, census meeting on the 16th. I do have some handouts. I gotta get to all the small towns. I had a blizzard since that meeting. And FEMA stopped by this morning before the meeting. I've got a spring flood meeting, as I stated before, on 29 January. That's in Mitchell. That's for our whole region. And there's a phone call this afternoon on dealing with rural transportation through the Department of Transportation. I'm going to be listening to the call at 2:30, I believe it was. And if anyone's interested, they can come down and sit in on it. Yep, 2:30 Central Time. I'll be in one of the conference rooms with the conference phone set up, and it's talking about the rural opportunities to use transportation for economic success. It's an initiative to address disparities in rural transportation infrastructure. Other than that, I don't know a whole lot about it, but I plan on listening to it.
Bob, so they'll be talking about the condition of the roads, is that there, or the opportunity to get in and out, or, you know? I guess I know you don't, you just kind of said you don't know, but.
Yeah, it's a brand-new concept from NACO, National Association of Counties, and Department of Transportation Secretary Elaine Chow, she's the one that one of her senior staff to contact the NACO Board of Directors. And so this is our first look at the rural opportunities to use transportation for economic success. So I'll listen to the phone and give you guys an update of what, and see if I can download some stuff for you. And that's about it. Any questions?
Commissioner?
Bob, some of the townships have received their checks for their damages. Do you know if all of them did, or just I heard from a couple that have gotten them?
All of them have not. All of them have not. There was an issue with, I want to say at least 2 townships. They had some paperwork mix-up, and no pointing fingers, but the paperwork had to be redone, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why my office, we keep everything on file down there in my office. So whatever paperwork they submitted, we was able to just step right back in and resubmit. And matter of fact, I just got a message today, we still got another township coming in today. So there's a select number of townships that did not get the payment. Their paperwork somehow got.
Yep, I understand.
And then, but they're in the process, FEMA's in the process of working with each township. Sometimes they come to my office, like this afternoon, I got a township coming in. Sometimes they go elsewhere, but yeah, FEMA's on top of it. Okay. That's different than, the briefing I gave you this morning was on individual assistance. That's public assistance, but yeah, by all means.
Yep.
And they're working as fast as they can, but I don't get the numbers on the public assistance.
Once the other townships get their, you'll have a total for us then.
I should, at the end of the whole thing, they should give us a total, how much we spent.
All right, any other questions?
Thank you.
No. We looked at that, we didn't know how much they were going to get, right? Because they submitted a certain amount, we kind of want to fill in. We were hoping to get, could you tell us when you get done with maybe that they submitted this and got this and how much they're short?
We should be able to, we should be able to tell you what they submitted, and then that's what you guys based your part on.
Right, yeah.
And then we should know, because things change. I mean, we have never had this since I've been in this position. So it was a learning curve for literally everybody. Right. Sometimes there's certain things that the next time, if it happens again, I'll know what to do, and maybe send somebody out to the field and assist the townships on the ground a little more in some areas. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we rely on them asking for help, and sometimes we just have to realize we have to go out and do it, or assist them ourselves. Right. And we know that now from the townships that submitted stuff. We've got a pretty good list of, if we don't have, a lot of it was like photos. They didn't take the photos before, so I'm going to go to the township and towns meeting next month or when it's coming up. I want to sit there and just have to preach. We need photographs. Take pictures of your stuff now, and then take pictures after your culverts are blown out. That's what gets them money, is when they can show the damages. Right. If I pulled up to one township, they had fixed everything, and FEMA said, "Well, I don't see any damage here. I see you replaced the culvert, but how do I know it was blown out?" That's where the photos are so important.
Right. And I just wanted to see if there's stuff that doesn't qualify, if if there's, so somebody turns around, they ask for 100,000 and they get 60. Okay, so why did they only get 60? They said this didn't qualify, or you did this, or if that's the number that they're going to get, if consistently across the board they're going to give us 60 to 75% of what we're asking for, then we got to know what we're in for. So
Well, yeah, once we get the final numbers, we can take a look at it, and, because we get the preliminary numbers. Once we get the final numbers, then we'll be able to
Look at that.
hopefully do what you're requesting, sir.
all right, sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to item D, be it noted items. Volunteers with the Brookings County Outdoor Adventure Center and severe weather storm spotters are to be listed in the minutes for work comp purposes, and you have that document provided to us. Just like to say from all of us, we appreciate the volunteers. We couldn't do this without them, and storm spotters have to go out in some dangerous situations to help keep the rest of us safe, so appreciate the volunteers. We'll move on to regular business. Is there any desire for a short recess before that? Hearing none. We'll move on to regular business. Item A is the first reading of an ordinance number 2020-01, an ordinance authorizing rezoning of the south 150 feet of the east 165 feet of Lot 1 Krogman First Edition in the southeast quarter of Section 16, Township 110 North, Range 50 West, Brookings Township, from a joint jurisdiction R1B to a joint jurisdiction B3. We'll read the ordinance. This is the first reading.
Ordinance 2020-01, an ordinance authorizing rezoning of south 150 feet of the east 165 feet of Lot 1 Krogman First Edition in the southeast quarter of Section 16, Township 110 North, Range 50 West, Brookings Township, from a joint jurisdiction R1B to joint jurisdiction B3. Whereas Caleb Spartan made an application to the Brookings County Zoning Board to rezone property from joint jurisdiction R1B to joint jurisdiction B3. Whereas the Brookings County Planning Commission recommended approval to rezone the property on December 2nd, 2019. Whereas SDCL 11-230 requires the Brookings County Commission to adopt or reject the change. Therefore, be it ordained by Brookings County, South Dakota, in accordance with Section 800 of Article 8 of Appendix C, Joint Jurisdiction Area Zoning Ordinance of the City of Brookings and County of Brookings, South Dakota, that the following property be rezoned from joint jurisdiction R1B to joint jurisdiction B3, south 150 feet of the east 165 feet of Lot 1 Krogman First Edition in the southeast quarter of Section 16, Township 110 North, Range 50 West, Brookings Township.
Okay, the second reading and public hearing will be Tuesday, February 18th, 2020 at 9 a.m. Move on to item B is an action to remove the resolution number 20-02, a resolution setting pay for election officials in 2020 from the table. Is there a motion to remove it from the table?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries as removed from the table. The original motion was by Boersman, seconded by Krogman, to approve the resolution at the 01/07/2020 commission meeting. At this point, we ask for improvement in the pay schedule. So tell us what we've got.
Well, Kristen did some scenarios. I'll let her explain that, but she did reach out to the other counties across the state, and that is included in there to kind of give you an idea what the other counties are paying. So I'll let her go through that.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So yeah, I did put a few things together here. As she said, I reached out to the other counties in the state, and I did get a few responses. And on the spreadsheet there, you can tell that some of them will pay an hourly rate, and some of them are doing a flat rate. So I did kind of itemize those. And then I also put on there what they're paying for their election school. And they're kind of all over the place on those also. So I did a few different scenarios on the back. Currently, the past few years, Brookings County has been paying election workers $12 an hour for our deputies, and then $12.50 an hour for the superintendents. And I kind of went back. I've got the the general of 16, the primary of 18, and the general of 18. And I just put on there the number of hours worked, and then what the increase would be if we increased their rate by $1 or $2 based on those numbers. And then I also did a workup of, for those particular elections, what we had for number of workers who showed up for our election school, and what that costs us at a rate of $15, and what that would cost us if we upped that to $25 or even $50. And I just threw those numbers together on there based on what some of the other counties have done. And then this year being federal election year again, I expect that our numbers will probably be right around that 70 for our election workers. So when on the little bottom cap there, I estimated the 70 workers and put on there for what we spend if we leave our election school rate at $15, we would spend $1,050. If we up that to 25 or 50, then that amount goes to $1,750 or $3,500. So Vicki and I did kind of talk about it, and we thought that to be competitive and be where we want to be for the next few years, we would recommend moving our hourly rate up by a couple of dollars to $14 and $14.50, and then also changing our election school pay to $25. Typically, our election school runs anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. We try and keep it at the hour and a half to get them in and out of there, but we thought the $25 would be a good reflection of kind of an hourly pay on that.
Okay. Any questions on that proposal? No questions on that proposal. Here's how I think we'll handle this. I would like to make an amendment or ask for an amendment to reflect the new hourly rates to the resolution. Is there a motion?
I'll make amendment to our previous resolution to do the precinct deputy pay to $14 per hour, the precinct superintendent to $14.50 per hour, and the election school attendants to $25 per hour.
Is there a second?
Correction, not $25 per hour, $25 flat fee.
Attendance. Yeah.
I would second that.
There's a second. Is there any other comments or questions on the amendment? Okay. Let's see. We're going to do the roll call on the amendment.
Jensen?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Boersma?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Amendment carries.
All right. Now we have the resolution 20-02 as amended. Are there any other comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Pierce?
Thank you.
Aye.
Boersma?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Main motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you much for
Yep,
doing
thank
that
you.
work for us. We appreciate it. Item C is an action to approve resolution number 20-03, a resolution setting weight limit enforcements on Brookings County highways. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any comments? Any comments on the weight limits? Brian, do you have any comments on the weight limits?
Same as it been the last few years, as it
Okay.
being submitted this time, so. No-
Any other
no
comments?
changes.
Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Boersma?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Action D is an action to approve agreement number 20-01, an agreement for voluntary right-of-way donation between Brookings County and James Gruber. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any comments? Any report on this one, Brian?
This is for the bridge north of Bruce. We had attained the west side prior to this. Now we're finally got the signatures back from Florida, and this will be the east side of the bridge up there north of Bruce that we're applying for a big grant, and I've also contacted the state, so they're expecting this also.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motions, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Motion carries. Item E is an action to authorize the finance officer to issue distress warrants to the sheriff's office for collection in accordance with South Dakota Codified Law 10-21-31. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any comments?
This is just a process we go through every year. Anything that hasn't been paid from the 2018 payable in 19 goes to the sheriff's office for collection, both on mobile homes and buildings on leased sites. And this year we have 131, which is up 21 from last year. So we turn that over to the sheriff's office and they collect them, and what doesn't get collected can come up for sale at a later date. And the sheriff's office works very graciously with these. I don't think it's our favorite thing to do, but they get the job done, so we appreciate that.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? Any comments? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item F is an action to approve a board appointment to the Brookings Health System Board. It's one position, filling an unexpired term through December 31st of 2020. And we had two applicants, Mary Ann Krogh, and Craig Paul. Is there a motion to appoint?
I'd make a motion to appoint Mary Ann Krogh to the board.
There's a motion been made. Any second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any comments? Questions or comments?
Mary Ann's the Dean of Nursing up at SDSU, and is previously we had the Dean on the board. Brookings Health System feels it's really important to have that connection between SDSU and their Brookings Health, because they have a lot of employees that work back and forth to their students that come up and do that, and they think that's they really like their input as a board. They feel it strengthens their board, and so when previous dean was on there, Nancy Farrenwald took a new job. Then they were filling the position. We did fill that position on a short term, and now that person has resigned, and so the new the new dean is in, and so I think it'd be a good fit to be able to have her on that board and make that board stronger. So,
Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Boisman?
I do think it's important to recognize that at the conclusion of the Mental Health Task Force report out, we specifically asked and discussed the idea of making sure that folks with some sort of mental health background were represented on the Brookings Health System Board. And because I couldn't read the form for the applicant that has been nominated, it's a little bit tough to understand what her background actually is and if it represents any of that as well. So,
Believe it would be in nursing, obviously. And I don't know your specific information in this mental health, but nursing department had I know they were looking for that synergy between the nursing program and the hospital. It was what the biggest issue was in filling the appointment, because they had that before, as Commissioner Coben had mentioned, and it worked really well. Any other comments? Any other questions?
well, I just appreciate Craig, putting his name out there too. Not that in disrespect to him or that kind of stuff.
No.
Appreciate all his work he's done in that arena, and certainly would not, want him to not continue to put his name into these positions as they become available. So appreciate his putting his name, and they're willing to serve too. So
Duly noted. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item G is an action to appoint the 4-H Promotion and Expansion Committee roster. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. I guess the roster is in a PDF form. Are there any comments or questions? Comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item H is an action to approve a request to fill vacancy for an equipment operator in the Highway Department. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any comments? Any comments from Brian?
One comment I would like to make is we have one active National Guardsman on staff with us, and he will be out of the country starting at the end of May. So it would be good to get somebody in there now so we can help fill that void while Mitch is gone, because he'll be gone for a better part of a dang near a year.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item I is an action to approve a request to fill a vacancy for a courtroom deputy sheriff in the sheriff's office. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Is there a second? Motion and seconded. Comments, questions? Marty, anything? Okay. Hearing none, any other comments? No comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item J is an action to declare items as surplus property to be transferred from the state's attorney's office to the sheriff's office, and to declare items as surplus property to be destroyed. And there are two lists for those from the state's attorney's office. One is the transfer and one is destroy. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any comments?
Dan, 16 file cabinets, what was in the 16 cabinets?
So we started scanning things in 2017 because we went completely paperless. So the cabinets were full of the 15 and 16 criminal files, both misdemeanor and felony. So we scanned a portion of those into our server, and then we boxed up the rest and brought them down to the basement because I wanted to get rid of the filing cabinets. We didn't have a use for them, and it was kind of an eyesore. So that's what we did with those. So there's a portion that have been scanned into the server and a portion that's been moved to the basement with all the other files. And so we just didn't have any use for those cabinets, and so we just moved them downstairs. And I know the sheriff's office might have a use for some of them, and then I'm fine disposing of the rest. So.
And you're following the county document, what do you call that? Destroyal policy, is that?
Yeah, it's 15 years.
You've got that, okay.
Yep.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item K is an action to approve the cell phone reimbursements for 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Motion been made and seconded. Any comments or questions? Any comments?
Just everybody knows my position.
There's your comment. Any other comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. All right. Item L is an action to approve and publish the rates, salaries for county employees for fiscal year 2020. Is there a motion to approve? Is
So moved.
there a second?
Second?
Motion been made and seconded. Any comments on the salaries? Like we worked over these already. Hearing none. No comments. Well, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Commission Director's Department report, and she's got several documents that are listed. So,
The first is I have the surplus cash analysis information, as Vicki had mentioned. Prior to today's claims being approved, we were right at or just under our 25% goal. That's where we like to kind of aim for to be at year end. So we're right on target there. I have included with my report is some information on the 2020 NACO Ledge Conference out in DC. If any of you plan to attend that registration window is open now. Visit with me maybe after the meeting or later this week, and we can see about getting you registered for that. You, as the commissioners, have been invited to attend this Center for Prevention of Childhood Maltreatment meeting, South Dakota Resilient Communities. There's a meeting coming up Wednesday, February 5th. It starts at 8:30 at the Research Park. And if you do plan to attend that, let me know. They are asking for an RSVP for that meeting. There's some information on that and you may have received this from SDACC, just sort of a general overview of the legislative session for this year put out by our association. And then along with that, there was a copy of that proposed sales tax for county infrastructure construction. There was one of the resolutions that our association passed back in September to propose this legislation for this session, so that draft, like a draft of that bill is included with my report. There's also a couple different things on the census. I'd received some information on information that they've released the new content on the 2020 census. And then Commissioner Pierce had actually shared with me, I sent this in front of you on your desks, was how that census speaks to federal funding. So there's a couple documents there on the census. Also in front of you this morning is a letter from our SDACC president, Cindy Heiberger. She's a commissioner from Minnehaha County, talking about the legislative session. We have chosen our point of contact, that's Commissioner Pierce, and then basically she's kind of putting everyone on standby. If there's anything that comes up that they need commissioners to reach out to our legislators about, she'll be sending that out or be in touch with Commissioner Pierce on that. I also received information from the Salvation Army. They're doing a Salvation Army kettle cook-off, a chili cook-off on February 29th. It's from 11 to 1 at the VFW. There's also information that I didn't necessarily hand out, but if you want to submit a chili for that cook-off, you let me know and I'll help you get signed up for that too. So I'll give you all of the rules for that. But wanted to make sure you were aware of that. Then the only thing I had were your upcoming dates. One thing that was on the agenda that didn't make it to my staff report was, due to the blizzard conditions, last Friday, the county holiday party that's being put on by our employee committee got moved to this Friday. It is at the 9 Bar nightclub, starts at 5 o'clock, and you are all invited to attend that. I know they've got some pretty neat prizes that they've put together for county employees, but make sure that you attend that if you are able. And then just some other things that I haven't talked about. February 11th, that's a Tuesday. It is a non-commission day. That's Youth in Government. The breakfast is going to be at 7 a.m. out at the Prairie Cafe out at Prairie Lanes. There's some legislative forums coming up on the 15th and the 22nd and the 29th of February. Those are all Saturday mornings, all at 9 o'clock here in this room. The first one is just District 7. The second one includes District 4 and District 7 representatives, and then the 29th is back just to District 7. Looking out a little bit further, we do have County President's Day holiday noted on the 17th. The 18th is the group from Russia. That delegation from Russia will be here that Tuesday, the 18th. They are going to be here during part of the commission meeting that day. I think we'll just do maybe an introduction to them and see, maybe have a little open session if they have any questions kind of at that time. But then I'd also like you to note that between 1:30 and 3 that afternoon is kind of our second portion of with them meeting with the county, and I've been visiting with department heads on that too. So that's going to be a session next door in the community room. And then, as Misty had noted earlier, March 5th, Thursday, is the Towns and Townships meeting. It starts at 10 o'clock out at the OAC. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
All right, thank you. Next is our state's attorney's office report.
Yeah, and I previously gave my report, so.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner reports and discussion items. We did have some correspondence received from the employee committee. Thank you. The Sky Chaser newsletter, DNR, for the Volga Dairy, and SDSU Extension 2019 annual report. With that, we will also start our commissioner reports with Commissioner Pierce.
On January 7th, I attended the joint city-county planning and zoning meeting for purposes of starting the review of the joint jurisdiction ordinance, and we just talked about procedure and the administrative part of that ordinance some, and we'll be meeting again. On January 9th, I attended the Public Affairs Committee, which mainly was concerned with what we were going to be doing for the legislative forums and for Brookings Day at the Capitol. On the 9th, I also met with Commissioner Bartley and the CMIR and the architect and a bunch of other people to talk about what we're doing in the jail. On January 13th, attended the Volga Fire Department feed. And we were lucky to have our state's attorney handing out the raffle prizes at that event. But what I did want to say is at that event, I talked to Jameson from the city of Volga about the census. And Jameson said, well, you know, they hadn't really done much on that yet and didn't really see how that was going to be an advantage for Volga. What did it matter? Because they don't apply for a lot of federal grants. And then on January 16th, I was at the census meeting with Bob, and the person from the census, state census, I don't know where that gentleman was from, handed out this flyer that I had Stacy put in front of all of you. Bob's going to talk about this to each of the different cities out in the county. But this, I could talk about grants, but standing there, I couldn't think of other reasons why you would want to be participating, getting a complete count on the census. And this lists lots of different reasons. And you might be interested in looking through it. So as you're talking to people about what's in it for me, this answers those questions. It was a really nice flyer. The other thing at that January 16th meeting, the gentleman from the state that was there to help us with our census planning talked about that code that I talked to you about last time. There apparently are a couple of questions you can answer if you've lost your code that can get you through that process, and we're getting more information on that. I'm still waiting to see a copy of the actual census questionnaire. I haven't looked at that yet. The other thing that came out of that census meeting is there was a presentation from Cammie Powers at the radio station talking about the digital marketing that the city is going to be doing. And Bob might want to chime in here, where after listening to that, they're going to come back with a quote for what it would cost to add some of that marketing countywide, where they can go, for example, I'm going to use Facebook because that's what I'm familiar with. You can do a Facebook ad that comes up on everybody in a certain geographic area, and what it would cost to extend that area from just the city of Brookings out maybe to more people in the county. Did I cover that right, Bob? Is there something more on that?
Yes, ma'am. It's going to be geo-coded, so it goes to places like Elkton, Aurora, Bruce, Sinai. They do it by the zip code. Then they draw a buffer so many miles around each zip code. And that's what we requested, because if you just do 57006, that's the city of Brookings. We need the county to be touched with these things. So we're getting a quote. We haven't got the quote yet, but we know what's in my budget, and we're going to work with them on it.
So that's what's going on with the census materials. On January 15th, I attended the Brookings Day at the Capitol with Commissioner Bartley, Commissioner Boersma. It was interesting. At the transportation meeting, I did ask if the DOT had looked at raising that $4 million limit at all. I think that's an administrative rule, but he didn't know for sure, and I don't know for sure. And it would be nice if, because of inflation, since the big program was adopted, if they popped that up a little bit, and he said he would at least look at that. I don't know if anything will come out of it. We don't want it to be unlimited because all the money will go to the big counties, but $4 million might not be enough anymore with the increase in costs for bridges. Attended the chamber mixer at the South Main Fire Station, and that was an interesting event. And then the other thing I wanted to tell you is that on February 3rd, that ad hoc committee that's looking at the possibility of a grant for the homeless people for housing, they'll be meeting on February 3rd for their first meeting.
Thank you. Commissioner Boersma.
On January 13th, I was also at the Volga Fire Department event. That was a good evening. The 14th, I did a presentation alongside the mayor for the Connect 2140 Lunch and Learn. And they were curious about having us present related to interesting things going on in the city and the county. We let the mayor go first, and he kind of did all the exciting things happening in the city of Brookings. And then my first question was to whether or not attendees actually know what the county does, and not a single hand was raised. So we gave basically a "What does county government do 101" as our presentation, and it sounded like everybody learned a lot, so that was helpful. The 15th was also part of Brookings Day at the Capitol. And then last night we had a Brookings Behavioral Health and Wellness Board meeting in preparation for our half-day facilities retreat and evaluation of their current and potential future facilities as we look forward to that retreat this Friday. So that's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Krogman.
January 7th, went to the joint jurisdiction meeting that was here that listened to both the zoning boards discuss how they were going to move forward. On the 14th, we had the growth partnership meeting, and it was kind of lightly attended. We had a lot of people out of town. We did have a quorum to be able to pass budgets and everything so they could get the audit done, and so they're working on their audit for that. But a lot of good things going on there. Collaboration between SDSU and that research park is really ramping up. We're seeing the president and a lot of people really taking a lead and working together with that research park, and to get some new research out there and some new buildings and continue to get that thing going. So it's been good. It's good to see. It's great to see. Really excited about the future out there. Really am, with all the new companies that are out there in the research park. So January 21st had a meeting with Beta as a representative of Beta with the school district on their joint bus garage work, and so putting together RFP for services for that, and we'll hopefully be on a fairly quick timeline. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time because of the grant deadlines, but we're going to try to get through that and see if we can get the RFP out here in the next week and then move forward with that. So, yeah, good meeting. Looks like we're moving forward. So, we're yet to be determined, but good start. So,
Is there a timeline yet?
well, there's a timeline. Well, they want the grant application is what normally is the first part of April. And so to get the RFP for services to do similar to what, not design, but to conceptual type of idea between the two entities, we've got some hoops to jump through because one is nonprofit and one is a government entity, I guess. And so different rules. The grant will be a federal grant, so that's got stuff. So we're combining two entities that will have maybe two different rules on them. And so that we're hoping to get a consultant who we're looking for that has maybe some knowledge of that, but also has some knowledge of conceptual design of his joint facility, and maybe some ballpark figures of what we're looking for. We can bring that, put that into the grant, and submit to that grant, and see if we can get that grant. So similar, I think, to what BKV did for us in the jail expansion type of thing, but obviously not the same. So, but we are splitting. I think Beta and the school district are splitting that cost to get that done, and then we'll go from there. So we'll see how many applicants we get, and then the process, how long it moves along there, will depend. So that's all I have.
Commissioner Jensen.
On the 7th, I also attended the city-county zoning meeting briefly, and then I did attend the county zoning meeting afterwards. On 14th, we had a 20th Street overpass meeting at 3 o'clock. Went through kind of a timeline, some discussion on how often our group would meet. I believe we were going to meet monthly, and we will receive weekly updates from Jackie Lanning from the city. On the 16th, had a E911 meeting at 8:30 in the morning there. Happy to say dispatch is fully staffed currently. There is some radio issues in the Elkton area. Bob's on top of that. They're kind of working to see what the issues are over there. And that's about all I have.
Thank you. Everybody's covered all the meetings I went to. On the 7th was a joint meeting, obviously, with the Joint Jurisdiction Committee, and the county meeting afterwards. Did attend the jail update with BKV with the CMAR. Attended also the Volga Fire Department feed, and we certainly appreciate the volunteer fire department and support those people in all the departments, not just Volga, but it was fun to get to meet some of those people. Had a PPC meeting that day. That group is always working on improving their response times and equipment and the things they need to have in order if we need them. I also on the 14th attended the DOT Highway 14 study update for the East Brookings Business Association. Had a meeting and very well attended. They had a little bit of an issue with the electronics, kind of like we are here today, and that was resolved, and it was a good meeting. I think the end of the meeting, I think people kind of understood that this isn't a project. They're looking for comments that are 15, 20 years down the road. There were some comments about some access to some businesses and closing access that obviously they're not going to close access. They have access rights and rules under state law. They may change some things, but nothing's going to happen in the next year or two, except for the stoplight at 22nd and Highway 14 bypass will go up this spring, as I understand it. But other actions as far as the interstate bridge, comment was made that the bridge had 25 to 30 years of life left, and the DOT representative that was present by phone made the comment that we won't be doing anything to the bridge right away. It could be 15 to 20 years, but we want to make sure we know what we're going to do with it in relationship to any improvements we make east of that bridge or west of that bridge. So those things were discussed. I think the immediate reaction is this going to happen in the next year or two? And it's not. And is the study going to be final? Hopefully they'll have some sort of suggestions and final recommendations before the end of this year. Sometime in August, I think, is when they want to put it out. But then again, that is a document that goes on a STIP program that's not even around yet. So at some point in time, those documents can be modified too as things change out in that area, as businesses continue to develop out in that area. So it was an interesting meeting. I think it was handled well by the designers of the project anyway. Just looking for information. I also attended Brookings Day at the legislature and also went to an E91 meeting, as Larry reported on. The radio issues are always how they seem to be present. We seem to be resolving one and we get another, but we'll continue to try and improve that situation. And with that, I think that's the end of my report. This time, I'll enter into a motion to executive session in accordance with South Dakota Codified Law 125.24 and also 125.23. Is there a motion to enter into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We'll take a 10-minute recess. Please keep it to 10 minutes, and we'll meet in executive session.